And yes, I eat kiwis with the skin on. Everybody should totally try it because it's harmless and all the vitamins and minerals, whatever nutrition is in the skin, and it tastes better, believe it or not. The skin is a little tart. It's actually really tart, and it adds texture. You should totally do it. Fiber. Jennifer knows what I'm talking about. And if you guys want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn and Twitter. LinkedIn because I'm old, Twitter because I'm a dev. And you can find me at Monarch Wadia on LinkedIn or Twitter. Well, I don't think you can do ats on LinkedIn. But anyway, yeah, Twitter is at Monarch Wadia. Follow me, like my stuff, tweet my stuff, reshare my stuff. I don't know how Twitter works, to be honest. I'm way better on LinkedIn, but I know most of you are probably not on LinkedIn, so it doesn't matter. Here's the agenda for today. I'm going to go over Git. It's going to be conceptual, and I'm going to take questions formally and answer any questions when I am in the question round. And Leo just we're just recording now. Okay, great. So nothing lost, nothing to we didn't really lose out on anything over there. I'll just start over. I like kiwis. I like eating them with the skin on. I'm a science fiction geek. I'm the principal developer and CEO at MintBean, where I mentor junior devs, students, and grads. You can find me on LinkedIn and Twitter at Monarch Wadia. Follow me, tweet at me, and I would love to hear from everybody on LinkedIn and Twitter. I think that's pretty good. Yep. Agenda today is this is conceptual. This whole session is conceptual, and I'm gonna make it so easy for you to understand Git, regardless of whether you've worked with Git or not. Doesn't really matter. And we're gonna keep it light. We're gonna keep it informational, educational, and we're gonna keep it fun. So if anybody wants to ask me, algorithm questions about how Git internals work and how another session. There's a lot of really good material online for exactly how Git works, but there's not a lot of good material online for the why use Git, the how Git is used on a high level basis, and why it's useful for you, and just like the TLDR Cole's Notes version, there's nothing really out there like that. So I'm just this is a gentle introduction to Git for newbies. And that's the agenda, and that's a squirrel calling the chaos gods. Moving on. So today's session, you can be awesome or awesomer today. How? You can help me make this session more awesome. Here are some ways that you can do it. All of these are totally optional. You can have your video on, and if you're decent and if you feel comfortable putting your video on, put your video on. It makes everybody feel like people are here and actually watching. Again, totally optional. You can ask questions, and you can just shout them out while I'm talking. That's totally cool. I think you might have permission for unmuting yourselves. So if you have a question, shout them out. Don't be disruptive, but I trust you guys won't. Or you can type them in chat, and that's totally cool. Stop me at any point in time, because if you have a question, chances are one of the 70-something other people today are going to have that same question. And help out by helping others by answering questions in chat. So if somebody asks a question in chat, you can answer that question in chat. And Leo just said there's a Q&A section in Google Meets, and I don't know where that is. I'll figure it out as we go. But apparently you can ask questions over there as well, and you can help me out by answering those questions in addition to asking them. Also, make it a safe space to ask questions. There's absolutely no such thing as a bad question or a stupid question or a question that's too basic. We're all beginners. I'm a beginner in my own field. I don't know much about a lot of stuff, and if I couldn't ask questions about basic stuff, I would never learn. So let's make this a safe space. There's no such thing as a basic question, and if we have time, I'll come around to your question, no matter how basic it is. And if you learn something over here, this is a big takeaway. If you learn something over here, pay it forward. Teach what you learned to somebody else. Talk about it to somebody else. Blog about it and tag me on it. Tag me if you think I can answer a question by somebody else. And I would be really, really happy to answer people's questions on Twitter, on LinkedIn. But what would really make me happy as well, in addition to answering questions, is if you paid it forward and you taught somebody else whatever you learn over here. And you can ask questions in the Shapes button on the bottom right. Aha. Okay. Aha. Okay. Gotcha. I'm there. No questions yet. Awesome. And let's keep moving. Just keep moving. We got an agenda. We got an agenda. So what the bleep is a Git? So Git is for, okay, anybody here, you don't know what Git is, you don't know what GitHub is, you're completely new. Show of, well, not hands, but can you please just type in chat and tell me if you've never used Git before? Most people probably haven't, is my guess. It'll give me a feel for what you guys would, on what I should focus on. Okay, so Grace is not, Ayan is not. 10 people have raised hands, never used it. Okay, good. Okay, how many people have used Git? If you've used Git, can you chat about it or raise your hand if you've used Git? Okay. So as you can see, everybody's new here. No such thing as a bad question. So Git, for those of you who've read ahead, shame on you. But for the rest of you, I'll read the slide. Not really. I'll go over it. So Git is a version control system. What that means is it saves multiple versions of your files in your project. It's a lot like Dropbox. So you can initialize Git. That's what it's called. You can initialize Git in a certain folder, and Git sort of takes care of that folder and keeps track of all of the files there in that specific folder. You can back up your code using Git. You can, artists use Git to back up their assets as well. You can, whenever you create files, read files, upload files, delete files, you can add those changes to Git, and Git keeps track of all of those adds, deletes, and uploads, not reads, but uploads. You can also use Git to view the history of a file. So if you have a file that, and this is a lot like Dropbox. So if you have a file, you can see the history of that file going back into, however many revisions. And you can have many versions of the same file, kind of like Dropbox, where you can have many different versions of the file. But Dropbox is really for non-technical people. It's a useful tool. It's really useful, but Dropbox, it has many different limitations that make it not a very good tool to share code when you're working on a project. So why is Git more powerful than Dropbox? Well, for one, you can see line-by-line history of each file. So not only does Git keep track of history, but it also shows you which lines in your file changed. You can compare versions of the file. So you can compare, all right, the June 10th version with the July 15th version and see what the differences of those versions are line by line. Git gets integrated into your text editor. So, and Lightspeed Gaming said, yeah, diffs, exactly. Integrate Git, you can integrate Git into your text editor. So your text editor actually can be Git aware, and it can give you insights into each line of each file in your source code. And you can also use Git for automation, more on that later. There's automation that's built right into Git. They're called hooks. So you have a pre-push hook, we have a pre-commit hook, and there's all sorts of automation that you can build into Git. You can use Git to collaborate with other developers. More on that later. And you can use Git platforms like GitLab, GitHub. There's a dozen and a half of them out there, and they're all pretty solid. And GitHub is the most popular one. I know it said, I know the title said Intro to Git and GitHub. But I'm going to kind of expand the scope and make it a little larger than just GitHub and show you guys a few different alternatives to GitHub. And it does a lot more than that. I'm not going to go into the functionality. Git's documentation, if somebody could just drop the official Git CLI documentation, the official one in chat, that would be really awesome. And people can see all the capabilities of Git. If somebody could just drop it in chat, that'd be really, really awesome. And let's talk about Git. Let's talk about Git. So in Git, your folder is turned into, oh, this is out of, right. So in Git, it's not out of order. No, it's good. In Git, your folder is a tree. And it takes your folder, and I mean, all folders are trees. I'm reading this and I'm realizing that all folders are trees. But what Git does is it takes your entire folder and it turns it into a different kind of tree, a version controlled tree. And each node on the chain is a commit. So if you look at this tree and zoop, one of these guys, this guy or girl is a node on the chain. And this thing is called commit. This is one snapshot of your entire folder. And we can go back and forth on whether it's the entire folder or not. I don't want to talk about, I don't want to get into the concept of a diff, because actually the concept of a diff is not super useful when understanding Git. What's more useful is if you just look at every single node as a commit is just one snapshot of your folder. Let's just keep it high level. Let's keep it there. That's the 80% of people are just going to look at Git and look at it as snapshots of your folder that get added on. That's all that Git is. This whole thing, this whole tree is a tree of snapshots. So each node is one save point in your folder. And those save points can be linked chronologically. So this is a branch. Like connected straws, all of these commits just get connected one after the other, and they build on top of each other, and they describe a bunch of changes, a history of your folder. Like if you are taking history, you know how boring history can be. So I'm not going to go into exactly how the history over here is constructed, but it's history in the historical sense. There are dates of changes. There are comments on what those changes did. People can actually leave comments on each and every single change. And when a developer, you have to manually create a commit. And when a developer manually creates a commit, they can leave a commentary on what changes go into that snapshot. I'm going to pause because everybody is very new to Git. And maybe it'd be wise for me to pause. I know there's at least one question. Aiden asked, can you host your own server to use Git with? If Git can work just fine alongside GitHub, this should work too, no? Aiden, short answer, yes. Long answer, I'll answer it later at the very end. Aiden asked, again, the comments on each change, they're just a commit message, right? Yes, that's right, Aiden. Great questions. So those are just the commit messages. And I'm going to go back to Muhammad said non-binary node. Yep, I like non-binary node. I guess that means that there should also be non-binary trees. But that was actually a pretty good coding joke. No questions in chat. Okay, great. I can just keep moving on. So many of these branches come together and they make a tree. And developers will often work on multiple different branches in the same tree. So over here, in this imaginary tree of mine, there's a branch that Brandon is working on. And he has these two commits right here that he's working on that don't exist in the main branch. Now, the main branch is the longest branch. And the main branch is the backbone of the entire project, and all of the changes go into main branch. Meanwhile, I've forked off, and I've forked off from the main branch, and I'm fixing a bug. Brandon's adding a logo, and we're both working around the main branch. And as we work, we're going to merge our changes back into the main branch. But I'm getting ahead of myself. But as you can see, Brandon's working on a branch called Brandon/add logo. He's going to be adding a logo. He's doing his stuff. He's already a couple of commits ahead of main. Those two commits are on Brandon's branch, but they're not on main branch. My branch is the fix bug branch, and that's not that branch is basically one commit ahead of the main branch. So as you can see, history over here, it's kind of like a parallel universe situation going on here, where Brandon's off on his own parallel trip. I'm off on my own parallel trip. Meanwhile, the main branch, that's the main timeline. That's just continuing. And Brandon's in his timeline doing his changes. I'm in my timeline doing my changes. So all of that is good. Now, if you wanted to get involved in a project, what you would do is you would simply clone, which means, wow, the chat is super distracting. I'm going to turn chat off for a second. So you can make your own copy of a tree. You can go to the server where the tree is hosted, for example, on GitHub, and you can clone or download the whole tree into your laptop. That's what we call a local copy, kind of like localhost is your machine. So your local copy is you could download it, and that's called cloning the repo. The tree as a whole is called a repository. A repository is where the tree. Oh my God, I can't close chat. Wow, I just see like oh my God, there's so many chat messages coming in. I'm so distracted. All right, coming. Gosh, okay, focus, Monarch, focus. Okay, so you can make your own copy of a tree and you can download it. I think you guys get the point. Now, you can also make changes, create a commit, and then upload that back. So notice what happened over here. Let's say you just created a new commit, brand new commit, didn't exist before. And what you can do is you can actually push that commit back into the server. Pushing is like uploading. Now you're going to upload just that one commit, and that's going to be on main, and you're just going to push it right up to main. And now you can see, now that you've created a commit manually, you've now uploaded that commit into the main branch. Now Brandon and I don't have that. So what we can do is we can actually merge we can actually rebase your commit onto our commits if we really wanted to. And if we did, then our branches would then go one step ahead, and we would take your change and we would just accept it into our trees. And that's how we stay in touch with the main branch. Now, this is a little oversimplification. People who are used to Git will know that something weird just happened, but that's okay. But to make it super simple, that main branch over here just got merged into Brandon's branch and my branch. So now we're up to date with main. And this is how that whole time travel multiple universes concept kind of solidifies, is those multiple universes can be synchronized with each other. So at any point in time, a change that exists in my branch can move into main, a change that exists in the main branch can move into Brandon's, a change that exists in Brandon's branch can move into mine. And Git gives you that entire flexibility. It's a very, very powerful piece of software. And it is very, very easy to destroy your branch. It is so ridiculously easy, which is why Git is kind of a power tool. And Git is one of those things that it's really easy to learn. When I do my demo, you're going to see it's just so easy to learn, but it's extremely difficult to master because you have so many moving parts. And usually, as a junior developer, you would go to a senior developer to talk to them and ask them for advice on how to manage your Git repo. You'd go to a senior developer for that. You don't have to worry about that at a very basic level. especially not in the workplace. Or if you're in a college classroom or university or a boot camp classroom, your instructor would be able to help you out with any branching issues. This is just a high-level conceptual overview. And now that I've scared the bejesus out of y'all, I'm going to demo Git, and I'm going to show you how Git works. Before I do that, I'm going to go through chat and see if there are any questions. William asked, history wasn't that boring, was it? History that makes you feel proud and happy of who you are isn't history, it's propaganda. If history makes you wonder how we got here, that's real history. So a lot of people just react against the propagandistic history, but real history is really enlightening and teaches you a lot. Let's see. If your email name is not the one you sign up with, please send the keyword. Yep, good. How do I see my name in Google Meets? Okay, I don't know. Adorbs is Adorbs. And chat. How do we make it? I don't see any question. I believe so, question mark. That's a question, but okay, finally. So Daoud asked, Git and GitHub are different, right? Yep, very, very different. GitHub, I'll get to that after my little demo. And thank you for the question. And yo, Rick and Morty, wubba-lubba-dub-dub. And oh, okay, good. Difference between Git and GitHub, Ishan, I will get to that. So Q&A. I have, oh yeah, there are tons of questions here. Okay, so can you host your own server to use Git with? I'll answer that later. Comments on each change, they're just the commit message. Yes, they are. So that one was resolved. How do I mark this as resolved? So the question from Aiden from 747 was resolved. I don't know how to mark it as resolved. Okay. Shivam asked, what's the disadvantage of using GitHub Desktop compared to doing Git through command line? GitHub Desktop will make you stupid. I mean, if there's any disadvantage that you should stay away from, it's being stupid when it comes to software development. And I use the word stupid very, very seldom. Do I use the word stupid? But GitHub Desktop will keep you so far away from the CLI. You'll get so dependent on it that you won't know what's going on under the hood. Your learning curve is going to plateau. And the CLI is just way more powerful than the desktop. So Git isn't a replacement for good developer communication, is it? Aiden, you're asking really good questions. Like if two people work on the same thing, there isn't necessarily a function in Git to make them cooperate, is there? So that works when there's a team of 1 or 2 or 3. 3 could work. Now, after 3, the number of connections starts exponentially increasing between developers. So when you have 1 developer, you have 0 connections because it's just all in your head. When you have 2 developers, it's like a line and you have 1 connection. When you have 3 developers, it's like a triangle and you have 3 connections. But when you have like 4 developers, right, then you have 4 points. And those 4 points have a little X in the middle of them. So then you have 6 connections. Now, when how do I do a pentagon with my fingers? When you have 5 developers, there are 10 connections. And when you have 6 developers, I lose count. But the more developers you have, the more lines of communication there are between them. And good developer communication doesn't scale unless you have a structured way to manage that communication. That's one problem, is just talking to people doesn't scale. The other problem is even if there is good developer communication, there's a chance that your change on your file and my change on my file conflict. And when that happens, Git gives you these really cool tools. Let's say we have a 10-line file. You modified the first 7 lines. I modified the last 7 lines. But those 4 lines in the middle, I think I did the math right. Those 4 lines in the middle are conflicted. They're overlapping. And because they're overlapping, if you were doing this on Dropbox and we're modifying those files, we wouldn't know which of those files would end up, which of those lines, which version of those lines would actually end up resolving at the end. So it becomes so easy to clobber code, which leads to bugs, which leads to downtime, which leads to possibly destroying your entire company if you have the exact wrong thing at the exact wrong line. So no, Git is not a good replacement for developer communication. And I think that's what you said, Aiden. So thank you for the question. I think you were aiming at that too. Assuming two people make edits on the same file within a given file, how does a Git merge determine which edits to accept? Not going to go into that because it's too low level. But I will, I guess it ties into my previous question, which is, well, Git gives you mechanisms to prevent you from accidentally destroying other people's changes. It does happen still, but it's very unlikely when you're using Git. It's unlikely enough when you're using Git. Syed Alam said, so Swaf, I understood correctly. Brandon and you make a clone of the tree, make your changes, and then the original tree accepts your changes, and that's how different developers work on the same tree? Yeah, exactly. So Brandon and I make changes, make clones, yes. We make our changes in separate branches, and then we push our branches up. And that's how the tree accepts our changes, because Brandon's timeline, Brandon's universe is separate from my universe. His branch is separate from my branch. And so any changes on his world don't reflect on my world. And that's how we continuously push up our work without conflicting with each other. And at some point, we want to merge it back into main. It might cause issues, and Git gives you mechanisms that help you that help you make sense of any overlapping or conflicting changes. It helps you walk through those. Ayan asked, can you transfer changes between branches with past nodes in the tree as well? Can you transfer changes between branches with past nodes in the tree as well? So yes, if I understood your question correctly, then yes. I'm interpreting that question as, can you merge a branch and another branch? Can you merge their changes if they have different nodes in the past? I'm going to choose to interpret it that way. And the answer to that is yes. You would just squish them together. And because every single commit is kind of like a snapshot of your file history, what Git does is it just replays those changes and it just squishes them together into one long worm. What is the point of Adish Shah asked, what is the point of making different branches if you can just commit the changes on the main branch? The point of making different branches is if you have many developers working together, then the main branch acts as a source of truth for the latest version of the product. So the main branch, by convention, has the latest version of the product that's been deployed or that's been shipped. And the point of making different branches is you don't want to just push to main directly. You want to make sure that your code is working right, your code is tested, and then you want to merge to main, and then you want to update main. Because then when you update main, you're basically saying, okay, let's deploy this, right? So if you just commit the changes on the main branch, it becomes really difficult for other people to review code. Remember, Git is a collaboration tool. So a branch is a place for developers to look at a strain of the code. Like, I'm going to use a virus analogy. It's like a different strain of the virus with its own mutations. And your strain is different from other strains. So the point of making different branches is so that we're not just mutating the same strain. We can have different strains and we can compare and contrast those changes, see which strain is better. And then when we know which virus we want, we merge it into master, sometimes literally if you really are building a virus. But yeah, the point of making different branches is so that you can compare each world and see which one's better to merge. Nate asked, what happens if someone commits malicious code? That's a great question. Um, it happens, and hopefully that person was dumb enough to commit it under their own name. Every single commit is ear tagged with the user that made that commit. And if somebody creates a malicious commit, then it's usually really easy to track down who it is. Often it's not a malicious commit. Often it's just a buggy commit or a bad commit. That's the most common use case where you would want to go track down where the chain broke, not necessarily with the intention of blaming that person, but more with the intention of fixing the mistake and analyzing what happened. So yeah, if somebody commits bad code, all that's going to happen is we're going to have to go back and see where that change happened, and then damage control kicks in, depending on your company's policies and how stuff works in your company. All of that depends on your product and how your users use it. It's like, your each and every single piece of software is so different. It's extremely different. It's very, very different. And what happens depends on the company's policy. So if I committed malicious code, obviously they first kick me out, then call the cops, maybe not in that order, and probably sue me. But then they would also be doing internal damage control, see what happened, see how to prevent this. That becomes an organization issue, not a Git issue. Git doesn't care if it's malicious. Git doesn't care at all. But yeah, I hope that answers your question, Nate the Baker. Mohammed Rizwan Sheikh asked, what's your go-to programming language? Oh my God, it's JavaScript. Stop asking me that question. Everybody's going to judge me. But yeah, I've done a lot of Java. I've done a lot of Rails. Java pays really well in the consulting world, which is what I like about it. And I've learned what I could from Java. And Java's a solid language. It's hard to knock Java. But JavaScript is just fluid. It's just really visceral. Like, I really have a good grasp on it. And it's so flexible and malleable. It's kind of like, it's, how do I put this? If Java is like flying a big Boeing 747 with all of its lights and dials and displays on the cockpit, and you need two people to fly it, then JavaScript is like a glider. Doesn't really have an engine, flies just fine. It has some weirdness. If you want to gain altitude, you have to find thermal, weird stuff like that. But much more fun to fly and way more intuitive. So that's kind of the difference between Java and JavaScript. Kind of, not really. What does staging code mean? Staging code is code that's in dress rehearsal. So staging is dress rehearsal before you push it live to production. So I think I've answered all the questions in Q&A. At the risk of going over time, I'm going to look for more questions in call and not in call, in the chat. Okay, you should get used to CLI. What's C then? Okay, moving on. So I will now demo Git. So let's, oh no, I don't want to use terminal. Let me spin up iterm. And I will attempt, because max are max, here we go, to minimize that. And so here's iterm. And in iterm, I have all of my stuff here. And I'm going to go into sandbox. I'm going to make a little folder called Kurius. And if anybody's not familiar with terminal, ls means I'm listing everything inside that folder. The way you initialize Git in a folder is Git Init and Git just initialized an empty directory. And notice how the branch's name showed up. Git likes master, GitHub likes main. There's all sorts of discussion about it. Like I'm all for the notion of not calling it master. Like I understand the notion, but well, not going to get into it. It's just, it breaks a lot of scripts when you change something as crucial and old as master to main. It just broke a lot of scripts around the internet, and not a lot of people were happy about calling it main. Anyway, I'm going to call it main. Git branch, Git branch main. Let's just do that. Did I do this again? I'm not going to, you know what? I'm not going to do that right now because I forgot the actual command to rename a branch. Oh my God, I can't believe this is happening to me. Okay, in the interest of time, I'm going to leave it be and call it master. I'm going to create a readme.md. And at this point, the only useful commands I've done so far are git init, and then touch readme.md that creates the readme file. And I'm going to say hello world, and I'm going to enter it into readme.md. So now it's going into readme.md. And just to prove that readme.md says hello world, it says hello world. Those are the contents of the file. Now we're going to do git status. And git status says we're on the master branch, and there are no commits. So we haven't really built any nodes yet. But there's an untracked file called readme. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use git add readme.md. And notice how a little plus showed up on my terminal. And if I do status, and it says we're still on master, there are no commits, but there are changes that want to be committed. And this green little thing says new file readme. And what that is the staging area, not to be confused with stage, but not to be confused with staging as in staging versus production. But this is the stage area. This is the Git staging area where we just put stuff up. It's kind of like the place where it's kind of like a loading bay. So the staging area is currently loaded up with a new file called readme.md. And how did it get there? It got there because we said git add readme.md. And then I'm going to do git commit. And it's going to ask me to enter the commit message for your changes. So I'm going to type initial commit, and I'm going to write that. And now it's saved. So now, as you can see, we're on branch master, nothing to commit, and working tree is clean. But if I do git log, there's a new commit. And that commit is right here. It has my name on it. Now you guys know my email. Please don't spam me. Here's my date, and here's my initial commit. And if I do, let's say, no hellos for you, and I do cat readme.md, it says, here are the contents of the file. Readme.md has hello world, no hellos for you now. And if I do git diff, and head is just it'll just do a git diff for the current version of the folder. As you can see, this is a diff. Past the gobbledygook, you can see that there's a new plus over here. It says no hellos for you, and that's a new line. So over here, what we're seeing is there's a new line that got added, and Git is aware of that. So I'm going to do git add dot, git status, and this time instead of new file, it says modified. So git readme just got modified. So I'm going to do git commit, and here's a shorthand for adding a commit message, -m modified readme. Git status, done, and now if I do git log, now it has two lines. It has modified readme, and it has initial commit. And it has the timestamps, it has the author, it has the commit messages, and it also has the unique ID of that commit. So There you go. This is we're creating Git history. This is history in the making. This has gotten super technical, and I'm going to stop now. But this is how programmers program. Before I move away from here, I'm just going to be considerate of the people who did follow along, and I'm going to go back to non-technical land. I promise you, this is the most technical that this session is going to get. It's all non-technical from this point on. I promise y'all. But I just wanted to give you guys a taste for how Git works. So is just git add dot considered reasonable? Aiden, yes, it is. Depends on what you're trying to do. Aiden asks, I should be typing that command at / right? In the root of the directory. It depends on what you're trying to do. If you want to add everything in the directory that's changed, then yes, you'd be typing that command in the root of your project. Adorbs asked, what's terminal? Terminal is what you're looking at over here. This is terminal. This is a tool that programmers use to, the longer I keep terminal on, the more people are going to drop off. So I'm going to put Rick and Morty back on. And I'm back to the color screen. Anywho, yeah, terminal is the, what you may call it. Oh, there's actually a great question. Like, this is really pretty cool stuff, but I don't really know what for. Oh, should I skip ahead? Anybody want me to skip ahead and just show you guys what a real Git project looks like? You guys want to know? You guys want to see? Yeah, no, maybe. I can show you guys some production code. I have a pretty cool project, I promise you. Nobody wants to see production code? Type yes or no in chat. Yes, prepare. Oh, that's a lot of yeses. Okay, good. Okay, it takes a while for Google to say to give me messages. All right. Oh boy, do I really want to show you guys my production code? So here's workspace, and I can go to Mint-Bean API. Should I go to Mint-Bean API, or should I go to Mint-Bean API? Has a lot of people, but it's kind of shallow. But then maybe it's good enough. Yeah, sure, it's good enough. So I have some changes. So this is in the middle of my changes, which is totally cool. I'm going to open up, I've never used GitHub Desktop. This is like, I actually installed it specifically for this workshop. Never used it. I used it once like 10 years ago. And I'm going to add an existing repo at the risk of driving more people away. Going back to terminal, repository path, add repo. Here we go. So if I look at history, this is an open source project that Mint-Bean is building. You guys can see the actual code, and you guys can clone it too on github.com/mintbean/devcollective.io, and I'll link to that in chat. It's a live project. It's kind of like a Hacker News clone or a Reddit clone, but for developers. And we're building it in the open. It's MIT licensed. It's totally free, and you guys can follow along. It's a JavaScript. It's a full stack JavaScript project. Lots of GraphQL, lots of React, and I mentor a lot of developers. With this particular source code, and you guys can follow along. Now, here's what I want you all to see, though. I'm on the main branch. It says so right here. And I can see all of my branches over here. These are all different branches. These are all different, these are all different branches. And there's a few features. There's a few engineering changes. There's a temporary thingy over here, a temporary branch. And we're on the main branch. Now, main branch has this history that's all powered by Git. And Aiden asked not copyleft. I considered copyleft, but copyleft is just, I don't know, if it's going to be open source, let everybody use it, is my philosophy. I don't personally have any reason not to I mean, I'm split on the issue, to be honest, Aiden, about copyleft and copyright. You should come hang out in the Mintbean server. Mintbean.io has a little Discord link at the bottom. You sound like a smart person. I think you should hang out over there. It's goes for everybody over here who's still here. You guys are all really super interested in tech. That's why you're in this hackathon. You all should definitely come and hang out in Mintbean. You guys will learn a lot. Aiden asked, even corporations? Absolutely, especially corporations. Nothing wrong with corporations. They're essential for the the working of our world. And the thing about corporations that gets maligned a lot is, oh, but they're all selfish. Yes, but it's for corporations, profit is like the reproductive drive for organisms. Like life evolved the way it did because of the urge to reproduce. And if you think about it, that's absolutely essential for life to really flourish. And the urge for profit is absolutely essential for an economy to flourish, for a country to flourish. You should always be taking in more than you give out, and you should always be increasing wealth. So yeah, absolutely. Corporations, definitely, they should be using code. They should be going out there and using open source code for sure. Because that's the only way that we're going to scalably grow better and better world for everyone. Now we can go into that, and we can talk about Marx and communism, but going back to here, I can go in and I can see changes everywhere across the entire repo on different lines of code, and I can walk through it. So here's one by Matthew, and he just made a little 2-line fix. Here's another change by Matthew, 2-line fix across one file. Here's me, a little 4-line change, little updating to the README. Here's a merge, and I can see Julio did a bunch of changes across a few different files. And here's Amy, and Amy did a few changes. And if I go back, I can just scan through this, and here's our contributor workshop over here. All of these people came to a contributor workshop. There's one happening on this Friday for this project. And they all did really little, really small commits that, not that one, really small commits that were wishes, and they just contributed it to the open source to the open source folder for the wish folder. And this is kind of a ritual that we have where we help people get onboarded onto the project using a little workshop that teaches you how to use Git and GitHub. And it'll teach you how to use Git and GitHub. So that's, I wonder if I can actually see the actual pulse here. So let's see if I can go in, and I can go into insights. I think they had a dependency graph, frequency, network graph. This will be really interesting. And you guys can see the entire project. Can you guys still see my screen? I hope you can. Bet you can. Okay, so here's the history of the entire project. This entire thing is a history of the project, and it goes all the way back to May 18th. That's when, wow, it's not even like more than a month. May 18th was the first commit, initial commit by me, and on about June 1st, we started getting our first contributor. That was Matt. And then we got me doing some more work. And then we got our contributor workshop. And here's the contributor workshop. As you can see, lots of people committing over here. Amy, Richard, Julianne, Claude, Rahul, all of them contributing back to main. And on and on and on. This is all stuff that is supported by Git. I'm just using GitHub to kind of show you guys what Git does. And here's Matt doing some more work. Here's Dina doing a toast animation. And here's the branches as I see them right now. And you guys can all see this in the network graph. Here, I'll drop a link. Here's the network graph, and this is an open source project. You guys are more than welcome to contribute. So yeah, so this is kind of how Git works and how GitHub works, and so on and so forth. Now, I'm gonna quickly just skip through this slide. Here's Nietzsche asking you to ask him a question, or asking to ask a question, actually. So far, everything has been Git, including everything that I showed you right now on the GitHub website. It's all been Git native stuff. I want to start talking about GitHub itself, and I'm going to just keep the energy going because I think we had the Q&A session kind of, and I'm running out of time. So is GitHub something you spray on before going to the beach? No. GitHub is a Git platform that gives you repositories. So GitHub is kind of like, a repo is kind of like a Minecraft server, and GitHub is kind of like a place where you go to create repos. So if you could go to a place to create a Minecraft server, that's kind of what GitHub is. It'll just let you create, or a Discord server. A repo is kind of like a server on Discord. A repo on GitHub is like a server on Discord. GitHub is free, has most of the world's devs on it, and most open source projects live on GitHub. Are Git and GitHub the same? No, Git was built by Linus Torvalds, and his fridge can hack your phone. He's really brilliant, really smart. He's the same person who invented the Linux kernel. A really quick thing to note is he invented Git because Linux kernel was getting unmanageable. So he just spent like, I think it was a week or two, and he invented Git because he just wanted people to work more systematically on the Linux kernel. So yeah, he's two massive projects. Really, really brilliant guy. He's one of my my idols when it comes to programming. GitHub alternatives that all use Git. So you can use GitHub, and I'm going to show you GitHub, but you can also use GitLab, Bitbucket, SourceForge, Launchpad, Garrett, AWS Code Commit, and there are so many more. GitHub is just one of them, and it helps to keep that in mind. So Git is actually larger than just GitHub. And now I will demo GitHub after saying that. So here is GitHub, and GitHub, here's our repo for devcollective.io on GitHub. And what this thing does is, this GitHub thing, what it does is it lets me publicly share my code with everybody on the internet, including you folks. And oh, Leo said we have 30 to 60 more minutes. Okay, awesome. That's cool. I like that. So here's the repo. You can actually go in and you can go into the folder structure and you can read individual files, which is really cool. I'm sure a lot of you folks have seen this before, not new to everyone, but new to a lot. And if that was the only thing that GitHub did, I wouldn't use GitHub. You can see history, which is nice. You know, I can see history over here, which is nice. But if that's all that it did, that wouldn't be great. So the two big things that GitHub gives you are pull requests. Well, three big things are, well, four big things. Three big things. Pull requests. You know what? I'll just go in order. Issues, pull requests, and then it gives you forks. So I'm going to do issues first. Issues is where you can go to figure out what you can do in this project, what issues are open in the project, if there are any bugs, what are people talking about, what are people working on. And over here, we have a bunch of different issues. We have 8 of them. In reality, there are way more. I just haven't had time to put them up. But these 8 issues are, issues doesn't necessarily mean a negative thing. An issue can also be something that needs to be built. So the user view, for example, needs to be built. The create edit posting needs to be built. I'm going to go into view post page. And here's the spec for the ticket. So view post page, a user should be able to see the current post title, the date, the author, and the name of the community. The author name should be clickable. The community name should be clickable. Markdown syntax highlighting should be correct, yada, 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 yada. And Brandon, he asked me, and this is why issues is great, wouldn't this rely on the existence of user pages? Should I create an issue for that? And I said, yeah, great call. I'll create the issue. Here's the issue number after I created it. And I can go right to that other issue, which is, oh yeah, we need a user. Otherwise, when on the post, on the actual post on Reddit, when somebody clicks on the author, then it's not going to be able to go anywhere. So we need a user view. So I created a user view. And as you can see, it tracks history. It tracks how it tracks where this issue is mentioned, and it becomes a really great way to collaborate with other developers. And because everybody is collaborating on GitHub, they're all using Git on their local machines, and then they're using GitHub to collaborate on the internet. So GitHub takes Git onto the internet, is how you can think about it. There are also these things called pull requests. So these are really cool. A pull request happens when you want to merge two branches. Going back to the branches, if you want to merge one branch into another, if you want to combine two universes, then you can create what's called a pull request. Now I can click New Pull Request, and I can say, all right, I want to merge from feed post page to main. And it'll tell me all the differences, all the file changes between feed post page and main. So over here, this is pretty massive. There are 88 files changed. And those 88 files, that's a lot of changes. And I'm going to have to talk to Brandon about exactly why he did so many changes. But yeah, he's merging in 88 files. I think I know why. I think it's because he did an ESLint fix. And yeah, 85 changes are coming from ESLint fix. So I can very quickly see how to merge two branches. I'm gonna now show you guys forks. So this is something you can actually follow along with. So if you go to devcollective.io and you have a GitHub account, then you can go here and you can click star just to give us a little bit of love. The more stars the project has, the more prestigious it has. So if you've liked this presentation, please, please, please give us a star. That would be really awesome if you really enjoy this presentation. And if you want to check out what GitHub's real superpower is, after clicking star, click fork. And when you click fork, it's going to ask you, it might ask you to pick an account, doesn't matter, but it will let you create a fork. Now I'm going to show you my fork. It's over here. And this is not Mintbean Dev Collective. This is Monarch Wadia Dev Collective. And I forked from Mintbean. So this is a copy of the main Mintbean repo that exists in my world. So I've just created my own copy of the whole repository that's all mine, and I can edit it. And then I can, after editing it, I can actually create pull requests from my repo into the main repo. So I can actually merge branches from my repo back to the main repo in Dev Collective, in Mintbean. So really amazing. To bring it home, let me show you guys a little bit more on the UI side. So if I look at where are forks? Oh yeah, if I click fork and I click the number next to the fork, I can see all of the forks that anybody's ever done. And these are all the forks that are out there right now. Many, many different people have forked this project, and they're all, a lot of them have contributed, a lot of them haven't contributed, but these are all different different forks, different copies of the Dev Collective project that are linked back. And each of these copies can contribute code back into the main copy. So Rafe asked a really, really good question. Is a fork just a branch of the main branch? No. A fork is a copy of the whole Git folder. So everything, it copies everything. So if I go into let's say Dina's fork. Then Dina's fork has, oh, where's Dina's fork? So if I go into Dina's fork, I'll see that she has her own set of branches that are completely separate from the main branches. And if I look at this little branch over here, I actually merged this branch in earlier, and I can see if I go back into my devcollective.io, mintbeans devcollective.io, and I go into closed branches, just here's one by Richard, which goes from, actually, I'll just go to Dina's. Let me see if I can find Dina. Here we go. If I go into Dina's pull request over here, you can see that this pull request is trying to go from Dina Poria :wish/Dina into mintbean :main. See that right there? Goes from Dina Poria wish Dina to mintbean main. So that's a completely different project that's linked through the power of GitHub into mintbean's main project. And Dina keeps her own clone, her own copy, but she also is able to push changes right back to the upstream repository. So on the left, this main branch on the left over here comes from the mintbean project, while the wish branch on the right comes from the Dina Poria project. Any questions about that? And I'll check Q&A. Rafe asked, so it gives each developer more freedom by being able to make their own choice, their own clones. Yes, exactly. And it also gives them a little extra something else, which is if I go into my own dev collector branch, let me just go over into mine. So forks. And if I go into monarchwadia/devcollector.io, I can actually fetch upstream automatically. So I can actually click fetch upstream, and it says, oh, do you want to fetch and merge 102 upstream commits from mintbean main? So it's asking me, hey, your main is 100 commits behind mintbean's main. So do you want to fetch and merge 100 commits? Now, it's only that behind because I commit directly to the main repository. That's why it's so behind. I'm going to say, yeah, man, like go ahead, fetch and merge. So it's going to fetch and merge. And it said successfully fetched and fast forwarded from upstream mintbean main. What does that mean? That means I just got all of the commits and I added them successfully to my project. And as you can see, I wonder if there's any commits like, days ago. So you can see there's, I think 6 days ago was the last commit. And I also fetched most of the branches. So now I've just updated my copy of the repository. So it's a really great collaboration tool. Rafe asked, yeah, I think I answered Rafe's. So it gives, yeah, I think I answered that one too. Shivam asked, how would you resolve merge conflicts in GitHub? Not going to get into that. It's too technical and it's too nitty gritty. I think we'll lose a lot of people if we go into that because it's really dry. So not going to go into that. But there are mechanisms and they're relatively easy mechanisms. Git isn't a replacement for, okay, I answered that. What does staging code mean? Staging code, oh, I answered that one too. How do you use terminal on Windows? Is it different than Mac and Linux? So for Windows, you can get something called Git bash for Windows, Git for Windows, sorry. So you can get this. That's one method. Another method is Sigwin. This is another method. And yet another method is Windows subsystem for Linux. So there are 3 or 4 different methods to use terminal on Windows. You can also just use PowerShell and command, and that's fine too. But I prefer using, I just prefer using Mac and Ubuntu personally. Another option for you to use the terminal on Windows is to use Windows to download Linux, create a boot disk, and wipe Windows and replace it with Linux. I would recommend that move. I think it's the best way to use terminal on Windows. Is there a good way to structure the directories on my projects, like the whole main concept versus source or others? Yes. Every single language has a different way to do it. Depends on what language. What language are you using? Vast Darkness, in the meantime, asked, if you fork, does the original poster know it? Yes, the original poster does know it, although there's nothing that stops you from cloning and creating a copy of the project, which is not a fork. But if you fork, then yes, the original poster knows it. Aiden, I had a question for your question. So what's your what kind of languages do you use? What is it that you what is it that you code in? And I can maybe I know enough to actually answer your question about how to structure your folders, because it depends on each language. Sorry if it was already answered. How does merge work? Oh gosh. Like specifically if the main branch has been committed from when you forked it, how does it know which parts to change? So you don't accidentally regress on your progress. That's, again, very technical, and I don't want to lose people. If we have time towards the end, then I'll totally go into it. And I think we might actually be at the end. And I can go into it, and I can show you guys a merge conflict. I like Leo's answer. Leo, you don't have to kid about that. That's a straight up answer. That's a great answer. All right. I guess I don't have an answer about. Aiden did ask. Okay, well, I primarily use Python and C, also done Haskell and JS. Okay, so in JavaScript, if you're in the front end, so a source is a place. There's so many ways to answer this question. If you think about the folder structure, it's arbitrary. At the end of the day, it's arbitrary, and the only time it's not arbitrary is when you're using a framework or a language that's very opinionated about where to put what. Now in JavaScript, it's very unopinionated. So in JavaScript, almost any folder structure works. I've seen folder structures in JavaScript ranging from, like 7 levels nested to everything's in the main folder. And I can see either of those approaches working in JavaScript, depending on how big the project is. For Python, if you're using Django, then of course it's opinionated. If you're not using Django, then it's unopinionated. So you can, depending on what you're using, that really makes a big difference. In JavaScript, I like structuring stuff in a way that makes readable sense and is easy and pleasant for developers to read. There's a saying, you don't write code for computers, you write code for human beings. So code is written for humans to read. Put another way, and this is my take on it, is when the singularity happens, singularity is not going to use files. It's just probably not even going to use code. But computers are still going to work. It's probably going to have CPUs and RAM. It's just that it's not going to need C or Python. It's not going to need that stuff because it'll probably be able to manipulate code just intuitively, probably. Singularity is Skynet, basically. So if our AI overlords decide to come sentient and take over the world, then they're not going to be using programming languages. Programming languages are built for human beings, not for machines. So write your code and structure your code in a way that's understandable to your teammates, understandable to other people, and you'll be safe. So let's see, any other questions? Okay, cool. All right, I've done demoing. Oh yeah, any questions? Also, a cookie for anyone who knows what this is. Lightspeed Gaming said, Singularity is a hypothetical moment in time when artificial intelligence and other technologies have become so advanced that humanity undergoes a dramatic and irreversible change. Google Dictionary. Yep. You should look up Technium. Technium is really cool too. That's a really brilliant concept. If you like Singularity, you should look up what a Technium is. Anybody know what this is? No? Oh gosh, you guys don't know what a lot is? I thought at least one person would know what a lot is. That's a lot of questions. Oh man. Okay, I'm dating myself. This meme is too old for y'all. Okay, deal. I'll take the cookie for myself. Resources. I don't know if slides are going to be distributed, but these resources will be available to you. In those slides, there is, here, a lot of blank. You can Google it. So a lot of questions, a lot of answers, a lot of time, and you can Google it. It's an ancient meme. It didn't survive. So yeah, I'll link this actually, just so you guys have all of these resources. I'm just going to link them. And if anybody is super interested in Git and GitHub, then these are actually really great for y'all to have. So of course you have, well, I'll start with the plug, mintbean.io. And that's where I hang out. I mentor a lot of people. Leo hangs out there too. It's a really great place for any junior developers. We have about 3,000-ish developers. This one is the crash course on Git and GitHub. They will do a much better job of going into the nitty-gritties. I just wanted to get you guys excited. That was my goal over here about Git, about GitHub and programming. But if anybody wants to do a crash course on Git and GitHub, this one's better for people who are super interested and super serious about it. And over here, I have visualizing Git. I'll actually have to look that one up. Visualizing Git. And visualizing Git is a cool little program that lets you visualize how branches and merging happens. Actually, we have a little bit of time. Let me actually show you guys how branches happen using visualizing Git. And it's a really, really cool little program. Your entire screen 2, yes, take my data. And here we go. So here's a brand new repo, imaginary repo. I'm going to do git checkout branch feature / notification. So I checked it out. I'm going to do git commit -m, added a notification. Now I've committed and I'm one step ahead. Oh, I should just restart this. How do I clean this up? Git init. Restart. Clear. Yes. Okay. So this is my first commit. Hypothetically, I'm going to git commit -m something. As soon as I do a git commit, Git adds that node onto the tree. Then I'm going to do git commit -m something more, and it adds it even more. At this point, if I do git checkout -b monarch /button, then I have now checked out monarch -button. And if I do add button, okay, there's a bug here. Git checkout monarch /button. I fail. Git commit -m something new. Okay, there we go. I don't know why it's not cooperating, but that little monarch /button thing should have moved up here or up here, and I don't know why it's not. Git merge monarch /button. Okay, I give up. I don't know why this is happening. But anyway, this is a cool tool. If y'all can figure out how to use it to visualize Git and GitHub, it'll work for you. I promise you. I just suck at it. Yeah. Okay. That's all I got, folks. Final questions and answers. Let's go. If anybody has any Q&A, I can roll it right back down to here.
Oh, right. And I forgot to mention, the challenges for this workshop is available on Hack It Forward, as usual. And I will send the link to the chat in a few moments.
The challenge is really, really simple. It's something that everybody will check out and say, oh, hey, this is easy. Then you'll run into a small hurdle. Then you'll figure out how to get around that hurdle. So don't give up. It's a little tricky, but not super tricky. And it'll teach you how your same repository that's on your hard drive can actually live on GitHub and live on GitLab and live on Bitbucket and any other number of remote repositories all at the same time. And if you do that, you're really going to understand how Git works and why it's so powerful. And Leo just dropped that. Thank you, Leo. Yeah. Leo, just use Docker, man, for Redis.
I can't download Docker for some reason.
What?
Yeah, like the only downloading thing I could find was for like the desktop app, and then I couldn't download the desktop app because I'm on Windows 7. That's so sad.
Man, is your machine beefy at least?
No, my machine like dies on like Windows 10, so I can't actually use Windows 10.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Have you considered maybe starting up an Amazon server, like an EC2 server, and just going bare metal?
Still looking into it. Not really. Yeah.
Any other questions? Nope. Just asking questions about your machine, and we shall avoid that topic. Yeah, man, Ubuntu might actually be a lot easier to run. Aiden is right. You can also get Lubuntu, which is also really easy to run if you're able to uninstall your Windows. Okay, that's all I got. I don't got any more comments. I don't have any more questions to answer. And that's it. That's it. Thanks, everyone. This was fun. Leo, thank you for having me over here. Thanks to the whole Kurius team. And this really appreciated the everybody's time over here. Insert other nice things to say.